The stars had never looked so cold. Captain stood in the massive hall of Prime, surrounded by creatures she had only dreamed about months ago. Some floated in tanks of liquid. Others were made of light itself. A few looked almost human, but their eyes held no warmth. The Grand Council chamber stretched up so high she could barely see the ceiling. Thousands of aliens sat in curved rows, all looking down at her like she was a bug under glass. She was the first human to stand here. She wished she could say it felt like an honor. The voice came from everywhere at once. It belonged to the ancient beings who claimed to be millions of years old. They glowed with soft blue light and had no faces could recognize. Humanity has been observed. Humanity has been judged. Your species is diseased with violence. In your short history, you have killed billions of your own kind. You have created weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. You celebrate warriors and honor soldiers. This cannot be allowed to spread to the peaceful galaxy. Felt her hands clench into fists. She forced them to relax. Behind her, Commander Minu stood perfectly still in his dress uniform, but she could feel his anger like heat from a fire. They had come here hopping for friendship. They had found a courtroom instead. Another alien spoke, this one looking like a massive insect with wings that shimmered like oil. We offer mercy. Submit to genetic correction. We will remove your capacity for violence. You will feel no pain. You will lose nothing but your demons. In 3 generations, humanity will be peaceful. You will be welcomed into the Concordat as protected members. You will have technology beyond your dreams. Medicine that grants centuries of life. Ships that cross the galaxy in days. Paradise awaits if you simply let go of your savage nature. The hologram appeared above them. Images from Earth's history played out for all to see. Wars, bombs, bodies in trenches, cities on fire. Watch the Battle of Stalingrad, the atomic bombs, the endless conflicts that painted human history in blood. She wanted to argue, she wanted to explain, but how could she? It was all true. However, they continued, we understand you may refuse. Some species cling to their violence like a child to a broken toy. If humanity rejects our gift, you will be quarantined to your solar system. Forever. No human ship will ever leave the space around your sun. You will live and die in your small corner of space alone while the galaxy moves on without you. You have 90 days to decide. The transmission ended. Just like that, humanity's future was placed in a box with only 2 choices, neither of them real freedom. On the flight back to the human ship, Minu finally spoke. They're not offering us peace, they're offering us chains. Stared out at the stars streaming past. I know. Did you see their eyes, the ones who've been corrected? They weren't alive, not really. They were like robots made of flesh. I know, said again. We can't accept this. I know, she turned to face him. But what choice do we have? They have thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We have one solar system and ships that can barely cross it. Minu smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then we're already dead. We just haven't stopped moving yet. Back on Earth, President watched the recording of the council meeting for the 5th time. Her advisors argued around her, their voices rising and falling like waves. Half wanted to accept, half wanted to refuse. None of them had a good answer. We should take the deal, said Minister Park. Yes, we lose something, but we gain so much more. No more war, no more violence. Our children will live in a universe without weapons. Our children won't be human anymore, General said quietly. There'll be something else wearing our faces. The Council isn't offering evolution. They're offering extinction with extra steps. That's dramatic nonsense, Park shot back. We're talking about removing violent impulses, not personality. Where does one end and the other begin? Asked. Humans aren't violent because we're broken. We're capable of violence because we're capable of passion. Remove one, you remove the other. Every parent who ever fought to protect their child. Every soldier who ever stood between civilians and death. Every person who ever said no when the world told them to bow. All of it gone, made docile, made safe, made into pets. Held up her hand and the room fell silent. We're not deciding this today, but I want you all to think about something. The Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years, not one war, not one conflict. In all that time, no species has ever fought another. Doesn't that seem strange? That's the point, Park said. It's proof the system works. Or proof that anyone who disagreed disappeared, replied. Stood and walked to the window. Outside, people moved through the streets of Seoul, unaware that their entire future hung in the balance. Find out everything you can about the Council, their history, their military, their secrets. We have 90 days. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with before we make any choice. 3 weeks later, made an unauthorized transmission from orbit around Prime. She had stayed behind with a small crew, officially as liaisons, unofficially as spies. Madam President, her voice crackled across the light years. I'm sending this on a secure channel. What I've learned you need to know. The Council isn't what they claim. I've spoken with aliens in private, the old ones who remember. The Concordat's peace isn't maintained by love or wisdom. It's maintained by fear. Any species that refuses genetic correction faces something called the nullifiers, a secret fleet that appears without warning and turns entire worlds to glass. There are no records of these species, no memorials. They're erased from history like they never existed. She paused, looking over her shoulder. The Council gave us a choice, but it's a lie. There is no choice. Submit or die. They've done this 1,000 times before, and every species that chose freedom is gone now. We're running out of time. Please prepare for the worst, because I think it's coming whether we want it or not. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Minyu asked, "What happens now?" Looked at Earth in the distance, a blue dot in the darkness. Now we find out what humanity is really made of. The Council thinks we're monsters who need to be tamed. Maybe they're right. Or maybe we're the first species in 10,000 years crazy enough to bite the hand that tries to collar us. She smiled, and this time there was something fierce in it. Either way, they're about to find out. The Council's ships arrived on a Tuesday morning. They came in peace, they said. 12 massive vessels that hung over Earth's major cities like silver clouds. They brought gifts and demonstrations, trying to show humanity what they would gain by accepting correction. Children pointed at the sky in wonder. Adults watched with growing unease. Doctor had been chosen to study the genetic modifications. She was one of Earth's best scientists, specializing in human DNA and neural patterns. The Council gave her full access to their medical databases, confident in their righteousness. They had nothing to hide, they claimed. This was salvation, not slavery. She worked in a laboratory in Geneva, surrounded by alien technology that made Earth's best equipment look like stone tools. The data was incredible. The science was flawless, and the implications made her want to scream. It's not just violence, she told her assistant, a young researcher named. Look at this sequence here. This modification doesn't just suppress aggressive impulses, it rewrites emotional response entirely. Anger, yes, but also intensity of any kind. Strong love, deep passion, the drive to protect. The fire that makes someone stand up against injustice. All of it dampened to almost nothing. Frowned at the data. Maybe that's necessary. Maybe you can't remove violence without removing the capacity for it. Then what's left? Asked. I've been studying the other species, the ones who've been corrected. They're content. They're peaceful, but they don't create anymore. They don't explore. They don't push boundaries or ask uncomfortable questions. They exist in perfect, gentle stagnation. The Council calls it paradise. I call it death in slow motion. She pulled up another file, her hands shaking slightly. And look at this. The modification is permanent. It affects every generation after. If we accept this, there's no going back. In 100 years, no one will remember what it felt like to be truly human. They won't even know what they lost. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, a young pilot named had been assigned to escort duty for the Council representatives. Most of his colleagues avoided the aliens, speaking to them only when necessary, but was curious by nature, and one of the visitors seemed different from the others. It was a small creature, barely 3 feet tall, with large eyes and skin that shifted colors based on mood. The other aliens called it a whisperer. It moved timidly, always at the back of the group, and noticed it watching humans with something that looked almost like sadness. One evening found the whisperer alone on an observation deck, staring at Earth below. "It's beautiful," the alien said in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move. The voice appeared directly in its mind. "It's home," replied. "I had a home once." The whisperer's skin turned gray. "Before the council found us, we were artists, dreamers. We filled our world with music and color. Then the nullifiers came." Felt his blood run cold. What are nullifiers? The council's secret, the fist inside the velvet glove. The whisperer turned to face him and could see fear in those large eyes. "Every species is offered the same choice you have been given. Submit to correction or face quarantine. But quarantine is a lie. Species that refuse don't get isolated. They get erased. The nullifiers are a fleet of warships hidden throughout the galaxy, ancient weapons kept by the... When a species says no, the nullifiers come. Within days, every ship, every station, every world is destroyed. Then all records are deleted. The species never existed." "Why are you telling me this?" whispered. "Because you're kind," the whisperer said simply. "Most species aren't, not anymore. The correction takes that away too, but I remember kindness. I remember what it felt like before they changed us. And I can't watch it happen again without at least warning you. Your people need to prepare. Because if you refuse, the nullifiers will come, and your beautiful blue world will burn." In a bunker beneath the Alps, engineer Sumi led a team of 12 scientists working on humanity's most secret project. They had pieces of council technology, stolen or scavenged from the visiting ships. Nothing major, just fragments, but it was enough. "Their shields operate on a quantum frequency lock," Sumi explained, pointing at holographic displays. "It's elegant, almost unbreakable, but quantum systems have a weakness. They require coordination. If we could create entangled particles that vibrate at the exact right frequency, we could pass through their shields like they don't exist." "That's theoretical," one of her team members said. "We've never successfully weaponized quantum entanglement." "Then we better learn fast," Sumi replied. "Because I don't think we're going to accept their offer, and when we refuse, we need to be able to fight back." They worked 18-hour days, stealing sleep when they could. The math was insane. The engineering was beyond anything humanity had attempted. But slowly, impossibly, it started to work. Small objects passing through supposedly impenetrable barriers, then larger ones, then projectiles moving at combat speeds. "It's not enough," Sumi said one night, staring at their prototype. "Even if we can pierce their shields, they have thousands of ships. We have hundreds. The math doesn't work." "Then we change the equation," said her colleague. "We can't match their numbers, but we can be unpredictable. Council species have been peaceful for thousands of years. They've forgotten how to fight an enemy that refuses to play by the rules." 50 days into humanity's deadline, the Council made a demonstration. A human colony ship called the New Dawn had attempted to flee the solar system, heading for a distant star system at slower than light speed. It carried 10,000 people, families who had decided they wanted no part in the Council's choice. The nullifiers caught them at the edge of the system. President watched the footage in horror. The Council ships appeared from nowhere, massive and dark. They didn't send warnings. They didn't negotiate. They simply fired. The New Dawn exploded in seconds, turning into expanding clouds of debris and frozen bodies. 10,000 lives gone in an instant. The Council's representative delivered a statement immediately after. "This is the consequence of defiance. The New Dawn attempted to flee quarantine. This cannot be permitted. All human vessels must remain within your assigned space until your decision is made. Any further violations will be met with the same response." stared at the screen long after the transmission ended. General stood beside her, his face carved from stone. They killed civilians, children. They murdered 10,000 people and called it law enforcement. They're showing us what happens if we refuse, said quietly. This is a preview. Submit or this happens to Earth. Then we're already at war, said. They just haven't admitted it yet. Turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, from rage. Call everyone, the full government, the military leaders, every nation's representative. And get me, Sumi, and anyone else who's been studying these monsters. If they want war, they'll get it, but not the war they expect. She activated the global broadcast system. Her face appeared on every screen on Earth. People of Earth, what you're about to hear will frighten you. The Council has shown their true face. The choice they offered was never real. Submit or die. Those are our options. Well, I say we choose neither. She paused, gathering her strength. I will not order genetic modification of humanity. I will not allow our children to be lobotomized for the crime of being human. And I will not bow to murderers who dress up slavery as salvation. So I'm asking you, all of you, to help me, to stand with me, to fight with me, because in 40 days the Council will demand our answer, and I intend to give them one they'll never forget. The broadcast ended. Across Earth, people looked at each other with fear and determination. They were being asked to fight a war they couldn't win against an enemy that had crushed 1,000 civilizations before them. And somehow, impossibly, most of them said yes. The world transformed overnight. Every factory that had been producing cars started making missiles instead. Every shipyard began constructing warships from designs created in frantic late-night sessions. Every person with technical knowledge found themselves recruited into crash courses on alien technology. Humanity moved with a speed that surprised even themselves, driven by the simple understanding that extinction was the alternative. Admiral stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned flagship Defiance. It wasn't pretty. The ship had been assembled in orbit in just 20 days, welded together from parts that were never meant to work together. It leaked air in 3 sections. The weapons systems were held together with literal duct tape, but it could fly, it could fight, and that would have to be enough. Status report, he said calmly, though his stomach was a knot of anxiety. We have 200 ships now, sir, his tactical officer replied. Most of them are converted mining vessels and cargo haulers. Only 40 were built as actual warships. Total crew complement is 70,000. We're armed primarily with nuclear weapons and conventional explosives. A handful have the new quantum missiles that engineer Sumi's team developed. 70,000 people willing to die in the darkness of space felt the weight of every life like a physical pressure on his chest. And the enemy. Intelligence estimates the nullifier fleet at 50,000 ships minimum. Each one is larger than our biggest vessel. Their shields can withstand anything we've thrown at them except Sumi's quantum missiles, and we only have 87 of those. Sir, the numbers don't work. We can't win this. Then we don't try to win, said quietly. We try to make them regret starting it. We make every ship they lose hurt. We make them remember that humanity doesn't bow. Even if we all die, we die free. He looked around the bridge at his young crew. Most were under 30. They had volunteered knowing they would probably never see Earth again. Everyone gets one final message home. Record whatever you need to say. After that, we go radio silent and wait for them to come. When they do, show them what humans are made of. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. On Mars, General oversaw the construction of hidden bunkers and weapons caches. If the nullifiers landed ground forces, they would find that humans knew how to fight on dirt as well as in space. Tunnels connected every major settlement. Weapons were distributed to anyone old enough to carry them. Children were evacuated to deep underground shelters. They'll expect us to fight like them, explained to his officers. Organized, predictable, following the rules of warfare they've developed over thousands of years. We won't give them that luxury. We'll hit and run. We'll use the terrain. We'll make them afraid to leave their ships. Mars will be a graveyard for any species stupid enough to land here. On Earth made a final discovery that changed everything. She had been studying the genetic code of the Council species, looking for weaknesses. What she found was both horrifying and useful. They've been modified too, she told President in a secure briefing. Not like they want to do to us. Differently. Look at these patterns. The other founding species of the Council, they've altered themselves over thousands of years. They've removed fear, removed doubt, removed the ability to question authority or orders. They're not individuals anymore. They're drones serving a collective will. What does that mean for us? Asked. It means they're predictable. A human soldier can adapt, can think creatively, can improvise when plans fall apart. They can't. They follow doctrine. If we can break their doctrine, they won't know how to respond. They'll default to overwhelming force, but if we can deny them that, they'll be lost. Smiled grimly. So we're not fighting an advanced civilization. We're fighting a machine that's forgotten how to think. Exactly. And machines break when you hit them in ways they're not programmed to handle. In orbit, Commander Minu led a desperate mission. He and a team of 11 operatives took a small stealth ship to Prime. Their goal was insane: steal the Council's military command codes. The codes that would let them access enemy communications, predict fleet movements, maybe even turn Council ships against each other. The mission took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of hiding in cargo containers, sneaking through alien facilities, copying data while surrounded by creatures that would kill them instantly if discovered. 2 operatives died when their cover was blown. 3 more were captured. Minu never learned what happened to them. But they got the codes. On the flight back, bleeding from a wound in his side, Minu looked at the data chip they had paid such a terrible price for. Was it worth it? Asked the team's hacker, the only other survivor. Ask me after we're dead, Minu replied. If we actually manage to hurt them, then yes. If we die for nothing, then no. 20 days before the deadline, Sumi unveiled humanity's secret weapon. In hidden asteroid bases throughout the solar system, in places the Council didn't know about because they had never bothered to look carefully, humanity had been building something special. Quantum entangled missiles. Thousands of them. Small, fast, capable of passing through shields like they didn't exist. Each one carried a nuclear warhead. Each one was remotely controlled by quantum computers that made them almost impossible to jam. And each one had been positioned quietly over the past months by automated probes disguised as debris. They're already in Council space, Sumi explained to the gathered military leaders. Hiding in asteroid fields attached to the hulls of their own ships, floating in orbital debris around their worlds. When we activate them, they'll strike everywhere at once. It won't be enough to win, but it will hurt them. It will show them we're not defenseless. How many civilian casualties? President asked. If we target only military facilities and ships, minimal. We're not them. We don't murder children to make a point. Nodded slowly. Good. We're fighting for humanity's right to be human. That means we don't become monsters to defeat monsters. 10 days before deadline, returned from Prime with the last of humanity's diplomatic staff. The Council had made it clear that all humans would be expelled before the nullifiers arrived. They were given safe passage home as a final courtesy. On the flight back, recorded a message to be broadcast to the entire fleet. This is Captain to all human forces. In 10 days, the Council expects our answer. President will tell them no. And then the largest fleet in galactic history will come to crush us. I've seen these aliens up close. I've studied them. They think we're barbarians, monsters who need to be tamed or destroyed. Maybe they're right about the monster part. Because when they arrive, we're going to show them what happens when you threaten a human's home. We're going to show them that some cages can't hold what they try to contain. And we're going to make damn sure that if humanity dies, The entire galaxy remembers how hard we fought. The message was played in every ship, every station, every bunker. Morale, which had been flagging under the weight of impossible odds, suddenly surged. They were going to lose. Everyone knew it, but they were going to lose on their terms. The day before deadline gave one final speech, not to Earth alone, but to the entire galaxy. She broadcast on every frequency the Council used, making sure every species would hear her words. People of the galaxy, tomorrow the Council will ask humanity to surrender our identity. They say we're too violent to be trusted with freedom. They offer us genetic modification to make us peaceful, safe, controlled. We refuse, not because we love violence, but because we love choice. The Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years by taking away everyone's ability to fight. That's not peace. That's prison. Tomorrow they will come to force us to comply. We will resist. Many of us will die. Maybe all of us, but we die free. And we hope that somewhere in this vast galaxy someone is watching, someone who also dreams of freedom, someone who remembers what it means to say no. To you, whoever you are, we send this message. Don't give up. Don't let them make you forget. We are humanity, and we do not kneel. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people heard those words. Most dismissed them as the ravings of a doomed species. But some, the old ones, the ones who still had fragments of memory from before their correction, felt something stir in their hearts, something they had thought was gone forever. Hope. In orbit around Earth, Admiral looked at his fleet. 200 ships against 50,000. 70,000 people against an empire that spanned the stars. The math was insane. The odds were impossible. He smiled and opened a channel to all ships. All vessels, battle stations, they'll be here within hours. Remember your training, trust your crews, fight smart, not hard. And if you get the chance, make sure you take at least one of them with you, for Earth, for humanity, for the right to choose our own damn future. In the darkness beyond Neptune, space began to ripple. The nullifiers were arriving. They came like a storm made of metal and light. 50,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, so many that they blocked out the stars. The nullifier fleet was a sight no human had ever witnessed, an armada so vast it seemed impossible that humanity could stand against it. Each ship was the size of a city. Each one carried weapons that could crack a planet's crust. The lead vessel, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Order, broadcast on all frequencies. The voice was calm, almost gentle. Humanity, you have refused correction. You have chosen extinction. Your fleet is ordered to power down weapons and prepare to be destroyed. Resistance is illogical. You cannot win. Accept your fate with dignity. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral listened to the message and then turned to his communications officer. Send our response. The reply was simple, one word, no. What followed was chaos. The nullifier doctrine was simple and had worked for 10,000 years. Advance in formation. Target largest threats first. Overwhelm with superior firepower. Expect surrender within minutes. They had never faced an enemy that refused to follow this script. The human fleet scattered in every direction like seeds in the wind. No formation. No predictable patterns. Ships dove toward planets using gravity wells to accelerate to insane speeds. Others hid in asteroid fields. Some simply charged straight at the enemy fleet alone, weapons blazing. The nullifiers tried to adjust. Their targeting computers struggled to track hundreds of ships all moving independently, making decisions that followed no tactical logic the computers recognized. When they finally locked weapons and fired, half their targets had already moved. Then the nuclear mines detonated. Humanity had spent 6 weeks seeding the space around Neptune with thousands of old-fashioned nuclear weapons, linked together with crude timing systems. When the nullifier fleet passed through the area, trying to maintain their perfect formation, the mines all went off at once. The explosions were visible from Earth. Dozens of enemy ships staggered, shields flickering. A few of the smaller vessels simply disintegrated. It wasn't enough to stop the fleet, but it hurt them. More importantly, it confused them. Their doctrine had no response for an enemy that weaponized their own solar system. Captain had survived the destruction of her first ship and now commanded a converted mining vessel called the Hammer. It had no shields, weak weapons, and could barely maintain life support. But it could move, and knew how to use that. "All power to engines," she ordered. "Target that cruiser, the one with the damaged shields, ramming speed." Her crew stared at her. They were 20 people in a ship made for mining asteroids. The enemy cruiser had 5,000 soldiers aboard. "Captain, we can't." "We can," interrupted. "We're dead anyway. Might as well take them with us. Everyone to escape pods. Launch when we're 30 seconds from impact. I'll guide her in manually." The crew hesitated only a moment before moving. They had volunteered for this. They knew what it meant. One by one, they climbed into escape pods and launched into space. Hopping the nullifiers would be too busy to target something so small. Sat alone on the bridge as the Hammer accelerated to maximum velocity. The enemy cruiser tried to shoot her down, but she flew erratically, spinning and dodging in patterns that made no tactical sense. The nullifiers expected military precision. She gave them madness. The cruiser's point defense systems took out her weapons, her communications array, her life support. But they couldn't stop the ship itself. At the last second, whispered for Earth and activated the ship's mining explosives, stored in the cargo holds. The Hammer hit the cruiser at a significant fraction of light speed and exploded. The cruiser's damaged shields failed. The impact tore through 3 decks. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship didn't explode, but it was crippled, drifting powerless. Escape pod tumbled through the debris field. She was alive somehow. Through the small window, she could see the battle raging around her. Human ships, tiny and fragile, darting between enemy vessels like angry insects. They were losing, but they were making the enemy pay for every meter of space. On Mars, the nullifiers sent landing forces. 10,000 soldiers in drop ships, expecting to take the planet in hours. General watched them come from a bunker deep underground. "Let them land," he said calmly. "Let them think they've won." The nullifier forces touched down in the flat plains of. They formed up in perfect order, preparing to march on the nearest human settlement. Their commanders couldn't understand why there was no resistance. Where were the defenders? Why weren't humans fighting? Then the ground exploded beneath them. The entire plain was riddled with tunnels and underground bunkers. Human soldiers emerged from hidden positions and opened fire with conventional weapons. The nullifiers, who had been modified to remove fear and doubt, followed their programming exactly. They returned fire with overwhelming force and advanced to secure the area. Which was exactly what wanted. As the enemy forces moved forward, they triggered thousands of buried mines. When they tried to retreat, they found the tunnels filled with human soldiers firing from protected positions. When they called for air support, they discovered that the thin Martian atmosphere made their weapons less effective while human missiles worked just fine. The battle lasted 3 days. The nullifiers eventually won through sheer numbers, but of the 10,000 soldiers who landed, only 4,000 made it back to their ships. They had never experienced casualties like that before. Their doctrine had no category for victory that cost more than it gained. Commander Menu, recovered from his wound, led the next phase of humanity's counterattack. Using the stolen military codes, he hacked into the nullifier command network. He couldn't control their ships, but he could talk to them. "All vessels in Sector 7, he broadcast using official council codes and protocols. "Vessels in Sector 12 have been compromised by enemy infiltration. Fire on Sector 12 immediately." The nullifier fleet, operating on programming that valued order above all else, didn't question. Ships in Sector 7 opened fire on ships in Sector 12. By the time they realized the mistake, hundreds had died to friendly fire. Minu repeated the trick in different areas, using slightly different variations. The nullifiers began to hesitate, questioning their orders, trying to verify commands. It broke their cohesion. It made them slow. In space, the human fleet was down to 90 ships. They had lost more than half their numbers in 6 hours of combat, but the nullifier fleet was damaged and confused. Their formation was broken. Their communications were compromised, and they were starting to understand something terrifying. These humans wouldn't stop. Now commanding a fighter wing, led 12 pilots on a suicide run against the Eternal Order itself. Their ships were so small the dreadnought's weapons had trouble tracking them. They flew into the forest of communication arrays and sensor equipment covering the ship's hull and fired everything they had. Ship took a direct hit from point defense fire. As his cockpit filled with smoke and his controls died, he manually ejected his remaining missiles and aimed his dying ship at the biggest antenna he could see. The impact was tiny compared to the massive dreadnought, but it severed a critical communication relay. The Eternal Order went dark, cut off from the fleet. Without their command ship coordinating movements, the nullifier fleet's attack became even more chaotic. On Earth, Sumi activated her hidden weapons. Across 200 Council worlds, thousands of quantum missiles suddenly came alive. They emerged from hiding spots and accelerated toward military targets, passing through shields as if they were made of paper. Shipyards exploded. Communication stations went dark. Military headquarters on 100 worlds found themselves under attack from weapons that appeared from nowhere. The missiles had been programmed to avoid civilian areas, but the destruction was still immense. Within an hour, the Council's ability to coordinate across its empire collapsed. The nullifiers in Sol system suddenly found themselves alone, cut off from reinforcements or new orders. They were still the largest fleet ever assembled, but now they were confused and bleeding. Admiral, bleeding from a head wound but still conscious, ordered the final phase. All remaining ships form on me. We're going straight for their command vessel. One last push. Even if we die, we make sure they remember us. 40 human ships, battered and burning, formed a ragged wedge and charged directly at the Eternal Order. The nullifiers tried to stop them. Hundreds of weapons fired. Human ships died in explosions of light and metal, but some got through. The quantum missiles had weakened the dreadnought's shields. The human ships, many of them piloted by wounded or dying crews, simply rammed into it. One after another, they turned themselves into kinetic weapons, smashing into the massive vessel with the force of small meteors. The Eternal Order's shields failed completely. Its hull cracked. Atmosphere vented from a dozen wounds, and suddenly, impossibly, the most powerful ship in the nullifier fleet was crippled. The remaining nullifier ships, programmed to protect their command vessel above all else, began to withdraw. They fell back toward the edge of the solar system, trying to regroup and reorganize. But their formation was broken. Their command structure was shattered, and for the first time in 10,000 years, a council fleet was retreating. President watched from Earth as the enemy fleet pulled back beyond Neptune. She opened a channel to what remained of the human fleet. All ships cease fire. Let them run. You've done enough. Come home. Only 27 ships were still capable of flying. Out of 70,000 crew members, less than 15,000 survived. But they had done the impossible. They had beaten the nullifiers. More importantly, they had done it while the entire galaxy was watching. The galaxy broke like glass. Within days of humanity's impossible victory, the first rebellion began on a world called. The species there, dog-like creatures that had been corrected 3,000 years ago, suddenly remembered what anger felt like. They stormed their council government buildings and demanded freedom. When peacekeepers tried to stop them, they fought back. Then another world rebelled, and another. The carefully maintained peace that had lasted 10,000 years cracked in 100 places at once. Species that had forgotten how to resist suddenly remembered. The footage of humanity's desperate battle, broadcast by automated systems Menu had planted throughout Council space, played on every screen in the galaxy. They saw 200 ships face 50,000. They saw humans ramming enemy vessels rather than surrender. They saw a species that chose death over slavery, and something ancient woke up in their hearts. On Prime, the Grand Council met in emergency session. The glowing with agitation tried to restore order. This is temporary chaos. The correction is permanent. These rebellions will fade. The modified species cannot sustain violence. They will exhaust themselves and return to peace. But one of the elder council members, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, spoke up. Unless we correct them again, stronger this time, remove more of their capacity for resistance, that would leave them barely sentient, another protested. Then what do you suggest? We cannot allow this disorder to continue. Humanity has infected the galaxy with their savage philosophy. They must be destroyed and their influence erased. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to send the entire nullifier fleet back to Sol system and turn Earth to ash as an example. Others argued for a full blockade, letting humanity starve in their solar system. A few, very few, suggested something radical. Perhaps the humans were right. While the council argued, President addressed the galaxy again. This time her message was different. People of the stars, we didn't fight the council because we love war. We fought because we love freedom. The council offered us peace, but peace without choice is just another word for prison. We understand that violence is terrible. We know our own history, but we also know that sometimes you have to be willing to fight to protect what matters. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We're not asking you to become like us. We're asking you to remember what you used to be, before the corrections, before the modifications, before the council decided what you were allowed to feel. You had passion once. You had dreams. You had the fire that makes a species reach for the stars instead of just existing on one planet forever. We're offering you a choice. Take back your freedom. We'll help you. We'll teach you how to defend yourselves. But the choice has to be yours. On Earth, reconstruction had begun. The battle had cost 2 billion lives. Entire cities had been destroyed when the nullifiers struck at military targets. The orbital shipyards were mostly ruins. But the survivors worked with desperate energy, building new defenses, helping the wounded, preparing for the next attack that might come. Admiral, promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, oversaw the military expansion. The remaining human ships were scattered across the solar system, training new crews on captured nullifier vessels. They had learned that council ships, while powerful, were also predictable. Human engineers were already modifying them, making them faster and more adaptable. We won one battle, told his officers. But the war isn't over. The council has thousands of worlds and millions of ships. They'll come again, and next time they'll be ready for our tricks. We need to be ready too. Doctor made an incredible discovery. Working with genetic samples from the species that had rebelled, she found that the council's modifications could be reversed. It was difficult, took months of treatment, and didn't work on everyone. But it was possible to give corrected species back their full emotional and mental capacity. We can help them, she told President. We can undo what the council did, give them back themselves. How long would it take to treat an entire planet? Years, maybe decades for larger populations, but it's possible we can free them. The news spread like wildfire through the rebellious worlds. Species that had been living in gentle, emotionless peace for generations could become whole again. Some were terrified of the idea. Others embraced it desperately. A few went mad when their full emotions returned after centuries of numbness. But most felt like they were waking from a long dream. Commander Minu established Earth's intelligence network, working with rebels across the galaxy. They called themselves the Free Stars Initiative. Human agents and alien allies shared information, coordinated resistance, and helped species escape Council persecution. It was dangerous work. Many died, but for every agent killed, 2 more volunteered. Became one of the most wanted individuals in the galaxy. Her ability to hack Council systems made her invaluable and incredibly dangerous to the established order. She moved from world to world, always one step ahead of peacekeepers, teaching other species how to break their chains. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Council sent ambassadors to Earth, not to demand surrender but to negotiate. The gesture was unprecedented. They had never negotiated with anyone before. Their way was the only way. The delegation was led by an elder who introduced itself as Radiance. It met with President in a neutral space station between Earth and Mars, and several other human leaders attended. Humanity has caused great disorder, Radiance said, its voice echoing in their minds. Hundreds of worlds are in chaos. Species that have been peaceful are fighting again. This cannot continue. Then stop forcing peace on people who don't want it, replied calmly. Without order there will be wars. Species will destroy each other. We have seen it happen. That is why we created the correction, to save the galaxy from itself. You didn't save anyone, said, her voice hard. You enslaved them. You took away their ability to choose and called it salvation. That's not peace. That's death. Radiance pulsed with frustration. What would you have us do? Allow chaos? Let species kill each other? Let them choose, said. Some species might choose peace without modification. Let them. Others might choose to remain as they are with all the risks that entails. Let them. And if species fight each other, help them find peace through negotiation, not brain surgery. That is inefficient. It will take longer. There will be conflict. Yes, agreed. There will be conflict. There will be arguments and disagreements and maybe even wars. But it will be real. It will be genuine. And every species will have the right to determine their own future. The negotiations lasted weeks. The Council, faced with galaxy-wide rebellion and a human species that had proven impossible to intimidate, finally agreed to a compromise. Species would no longer be forced to accept genetic modification. Those who wanted it could choose it voluntarily. Those who refused would be free to maintain their natural state. The nullifier fleet would be disbanded. The secret weapons would be destroyed. And humanity would help establish a new organization, a genuine coalition of free species that would work together voluntarily rather than through forced compliance. It wasn't perfect. Some Council species refused the changes and isolated themselves in their own sectors, maintaining the old ways. Some of the newly freed species immediately went to war with old enemies, working through grievances that had been suppressed for thousands of years. The galaxy became messy and complicated and dangerous. But it was free. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, stood as Earth's ambassador at the founding ceremony of the Free Worlds Coalition. 200 species had gathered, representing planets across half the galaxy. Some were former Council members who had embraced reform. Others were newly freed species, still learning how to live without external control. A few were entirely new discoveries, species that humanity had contacted in their exploration efforts. We gather today not as master and servant, said, his voice transmitted to all assembled delegates, but as equals, free people from free worlds. We will disagree, we will argue, sometimes we might even fight, but we will do it as partners, not as owners and property. The Council promised eternal peace at the cost of identity. We offer something better, freedom, with all the risks and rewards that come with it. The applause was chaotic, nothing like the ordered, synchronized responses that Council ceremonies featured. Some species cheered. Others made sounds humans couldn't interpret. A few simply stood in silence, overwhelmed by the moment. It was imperfect and beautiful. On Earth, now orbited by a dozen new space stations and surrounded by a growing fleet, Doctor worked in her laboratory with alien colleagues. They were developing better methods of revering genetic modifications, helping more species reclaim their full potential. It was slow work, but satisfying in ways her old research had never been. Engineer Sumi had become something of a legend. She traveled from world to world, teaching other species how to defend themselves, how to build weapons and shields, how to maintain their independence. Some called her a warmonger. She called herself a teacher of freedom. General established the first military academy on Mars. Species from across the free world sent their people to learn human tactics, human adaptability, human stubbornness. The academy's motto was simple: never kneel. Admiral occasionally met with Radiance, who had left the council to join the free worlds as an observer. The ancient being was trying to understand a concept it had never truly grasped: freedom. One day, over a simple meal in its office, Radiance asked the question that had haunted it for years. Was it worth it? 2 billion of your people died. Your world was nearly destroyed. Was freedom worth that price? Was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. If you had asked me before the battle, I don't know what I would have said. But now, seeing what we've built, seeing species across the galaxy reclaiming their identities, seeing people make their own choices, yes, it was worth it. Freedom isn't something you can price. You either have it or you don't. And we chose to have it no matter the cost. 10 years after the day humanity chose war over peace, President, now elderly and tired, stood with her on a balcony overlooking Seoul. The city had been rebuilt. New buildings stood beside old monuments. Above, ships from a dozen species moved through orbit, coming and going in the steady traffic of a free port. Her granddaughter, barely 8 years old, asked the question, "Grandmother, why did we fight? The council just wanted us to be peaceful." Knelt down, looking into the child's eyes. They wanted us to be safe, but safe isn't the same as free. They wanted to change what we are, make us into something that couldn't hurt anyone, but that meant we also couldn't protect anyone, couldn't love fiercely, couldn't dream dangerously, couldn't be human. But people died. Yes, many people died, and we remember every single one of them. She pointed to the memorial stations visible in orbit, spinning monuments covered in the names of the fallen. They died so you could grow up making your own choices, so you could be angry when injustice happens, so you could love with your whole heart, so you could be fully, completely human. The child thought about this for a moment. Was it worth it? Smiled sadly. Ask me that question when you're old enough to understand what you would have lost. Then you'll know the answer yourself. Above them, a human ship departed for the stars, carrying explorers and dreamers and people who wanted to see what was beyond the horizon. It passed a dozen alien vessels doing the same, all of them free to go where they wanted, be what they wanted, choose their own paths. The universe had trembled when humanity chose war over peace. Now it thrived in the complicated, messy, beautiful freedom that choice had bought. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect, but it was real. And that was enough.